Blood trickled from Darius Kane's split lip as he stood in the Detroit courtroom, glaring at Officer Victor Grayson, who'd just kicked him before a stunned judge. Everyone thought it was over, another black man crushed by power, but Darius's gaze promised something fierce, unexpected. What began as a simple witness stand turned into a spark that would torch lives, unravel a city's corruption, and leave echoes no one could predict. One brutal kick launched a war with scars stretching far into his future. What will Darius do next? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode is one you can't miss. Darius Kane stepped off the curb outside his modest Detroit apartment, the early morning air sharp against his skin. His navy suit pressed crisp, a faint sheen on his polished shoes catching the dawn. 38 years old, 16 years a Navy SEAL, he carried himself with the quiet precision of a man who'd faced death in deserts and jungles, who'd learned to measure every step, every breath. Today, though, wasn't about war zones. It was about family. His nephew, Caleb, 19, sat in a cell, accused of assaulting a store clerk in a case reeking of lies. Darius had flown in from Virginia 2 days ago, called to testify as a character, witness, his military record a shield he hoped would cut through the haze of a system that too often saw skin before truth. The Wayne County Courthouse loomed ahead, its gray stone facade pitted from decades of Michigan winters, a place where justice was supposed to live, but often felt like it was on life support. He adjusted the folder under his arm, Caleb's legal documents tucked inside, and walked through the glass doors, unaware that this ordinary Tuesday would become the hinge on which his life would swing. Inside, the lobby buzzed with the usual chaos. Lawyers in cheap suits barking into phones, families clutching paperwork, security scanners beeping like impatient metronomes. Darius moved toward the checkpoint, his military ID ready. But the air shifted as he approached. 2 guards, both white, one with a buzz cut and a smirk, the other heavy-set with eyes like slits, locked onto him. Their hands hovered near their radios, as if his 6'2" frame, broad but lean, was a threat just by existing. He handed over his ID, voice steady, calm. "I'm here for the Bell case, courtroom 3, testifying as a witness." The buzz-cut guard barely glanced at the card, his lips curling. "Wait here," he muttered, stepping to the side to whisper with his partner. Darius caught fragments. "Suspicious, doesn't look right. Call it in." His jaw tightened, but he stood still, years of discipline keeping his anger caged. He'd been through this before, store clerks trailing him, cops eyeing his car, strangers crossing the street when he passed. It wasn't new, but it never stopped stinging. Minutes ticked by, the line behind him growing restless, but the guards kept him waiting, their glances darting back like he might bolt. Finally, the heavy-set one waved him through grudgingly, but as Darius reached for his ID, a third figure emerged from the crowd. Officer Victor Grayson, mid-40s, barrel-chested with a face carved from contempt, strode across the marble floor, his boots echoing like gunshots. Grayson's badge glinted under the fluorescent lights, but it was his eyes that hit Darius hardest, narrow, burning with something deeper than suspicion, something personal. "You," Grayson snapped, pointing a thick finger. "What's your business here?" Darius met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm a witness," he said, holding up his ID again. "Courtroom 3. Grayson snatched the card, barely looking at it, his lip twitching. As he stepped closer, close enough for Darius to smell stale coffee on his breath. "You look like trouble," Grayson said, loud enough for the lobby to hear. People turned, stares prickling Darius's skin. "I've got credentials," Darius replied, voice low but firm. "Check them." Grayson didn't. Instead, he tossed the ID onto the scanner belt like it was trash, his hand brushing his holster as he leaned in. "Don't tell me how to do my job," he hissed. "You don't belong here." The words landed like a slap, but Darius didn't flinch, his training kicking in, every muscle poised, every sense sharp. He could have disarmed Grayson in seconds, could have made him regret the words, but he didn't. Not here, not now. Caleb needed him steady, not reckless. "Let's keep this civil, officer," Darius said, raising his hand slightly, palms open. "I'm just doing my duty." Grayson's face reddened, his ego bruised by the calm. He grabbed Darius's arm, yanking him toward a side corridor, away from the crowd. "You think you're slick?" he growled, shoving Darius against the wall. The impact. Rattling a framed photo of a judge. Darius's folder hit the floor, papers scattering. A woman nearby gasped, but no one moved to help. "Stay put," Grayson barked, radioing for backup, his voice dripping with triumph, as if he'd caught a fugitive. Not a man with a clean record and a purpose. The corridor felt smaller now, the walls closing in as Grayson loomed, his hand still gripping Darius's arm. "Backup's coming," he said, smirking. "We'll see who you really are." Darius's pulse thumped, not from fear, but from the fire building. Inside, the kind he'd felt in war zones when the odds stacked against him. He could break free, could turn this into a fight, but he saw Caleb's face in his mind, scared, locked in a cell, counting on him. He stayed still, eyes locked on Grayson's, reading the man's rage, his need to dominate. 2 more officers arrived, younger, hesitant, but they followed Grayson's lead, flanking Darius like he was a threat. "Move," Grayson ordered, shoving him toward the courtroom doors. Darius scooped up his papers, his suit now creased, and walked head high, ignoring the whispers trailing him. The lobby watched, some with pity, others with judgment, but none spoke up. That was the first cut, the silence of a system that let men like Grayson act unchecked. Courtroom 3 was packed, the air thick with tension, Caleb's case already underway. Darius slipped into the back row, his testimony scheduled after the prosecution's opening. Caleb sat at the defense table, his lanky frame hunched, eyes darting to Darius with a mix of hope and fear. The judge, a grey-haired woman with a no-nonsense stare, banged her gavel as the prosecutor droned on about violent tendencies. Darius's chest tightened, the lies about his nephew twisting like a knife. He'd raised Caleb after his sisters. Death taught him to throw a football, to stand tall, to dream bigger than their crumbling neighborhood. Seeing him now cuffed like a criminal for a crime he didn't commit hurt worse than any bullet Darius had dodged overseas. He scanned the room, noting the jury, mostly white, their faces unreadable, and the spectators, a mix of curious and bored. Then he saw Grayson standing by the door, arms crossed, watching him like a hawk circling prey. The bailiff called Darius to the stand, and he rose, smoothing his suit, his steps measured despite the bruise forming where Grayson had shoved him. He swore in, voice steady, and began answering questions about Caleb's character, his volunteer work, his college plans. The defense attorney, a wiry man with glasses, leaned in, grateful for Darius's presence, his military record a rare asset in a case like this. But Grayson shifted, his boots scuffing the floor, drawing eyes. Darius kept talking, detailing Caleb's honor roll streak, when Grayson interrupted, striding forward, his voice booming. "This guy's no hero," he shouted, pointing at Darius. "He's got no business here." The judge banged her gavel, ordering silence, but Grayson didn't stop. "He matches a suspect we're looking for," he lied, his face a mask of righteous fury. "Step down now." Darius froze, his hands gripping the stand, every eye on him. The judge hesitated, her authority wavering under Grayson's badge. "Officer," she started, but Grayson cut her off, moving closer. "You heard me," he yelled, and before anyone could react, he lunged, his boot slamming into Darius's ribs with a sickening thud. Darius staggered, pain exploding through his side, blood welling in his mouth as he caught himself on the rail. The courtroom erupted, gasps and shouts filling the air, the jury recoiling, Caleb crying out. A woman in the back, a paralegal named Lena, fumbled her phone, hitting record as Grayson stood over Darius, chest heaving, daring him to fight back. Darius spit blood onto the polished floor, his eyes locking onto Grayson's, not with fear but with a promise, a spark that said this wasn't over. "Get him out," the judge snapped, but her voice shook, the system's cracks exposed in that single brutal moment. Darius stood slowly, refusing help from the bailiff, his suit stained, his dignity intact. He didn't look at Grayson as he was. Let out didn't give him the satisfaction. Caleb's sobs followed him, each one a weight heavier than the kick. Outside, paramedics checked his ribs, bruising but not broken, while cops milled around avoiding his gaze. Lena's video hit the internet within minutes. her shaky footage spreading across Detroit's social media like wildfire. By noon it had 10,000 views, comments flooding in, some calling Grayson a thug, others too many saying Darius deserved it, just another black man, causing trouble. Darius sat in the ambulance, ignoring the medic's chatter, his phone buzzing with notifications he didn't check. He saw Grayson across the lot, laughing with another cop, untouched, untouchable, or so he thought. Back at his apartment, Darius cleaned the blood from his face, the mirror reflecting a man who'd survived worse but never felt this raw. His ribs ached, but the real pain was deeper, the kind that came from seeing the world's ugliness up close. He called his old SEAL teammate, Jamal Carter, now a private investigator with a knack for digging up dirt. Jamal answered on the first ring, his voice warm but sharp. "Saw the video, man," he said. "You okay?" Darius didn't answer that. "I need you here," he said instead. "Grayson's not just one bad cop, I can feel it." Jamal didn't hesitate. "On the next flight," he said. "We'll burn this down together." As night fell, Darius stood by his window, the city's lights flickering, like distant stars. The video had hit 50,000 views now, hashtags trending, protests brewing downtown. He thought of Caleb, still locked up, of the courtroom's silence, of Grayson's smirk. He'd come to Detroit to save his nephew, but something bigger was pulling him in. A fight he hadn't asked for but couldn't walk away from. Grayson had drawn first blood, but Darius wasn't the kind to bleed quietly. The spark had ignited, and the fire was coming, whether Detroit was ready or not. Darius Kane sat on the edge of his couch, the glow of his phone screen cutting through the dimness of his Detroit apartment, the city's restless hum seeping through cracked windows. The video of Officer Victor Grayson kicking him in the courtroom had exploded online, racking up 200,000 views in hours. The comments a chaotic mix of fury and venom. His ribs throbbed, a dull ache radiating with every breath, but his mind was sharper than ever, replaying Grayson's smirk, the judge's hesitation, Caleb's terrified eyes. He'd come to testify, to pull his nephew out of a system rigged against him, but now he was in the crosshairs, a target painted on his back by a cop who didn't just hate him, he hated what Darius represented. What kind of man kicks a witness in a courtroom and walks away laughing? Darius knew the answer, the kind with power he didn't earn and a badge he didn't deserve. He couldn't sit still, not with Caleb still locked up, not with that video looping across Detroit like a war drum. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. The door buzzed, a harsh jolt in the quiet, and Darius stood, wincing as his side protested. He checked the peephole, then swung the door open for Jamal Carter, his old SEAL teammate, a wiry man with a shaved head and a grin that could cut glass. Jamal dropped a duffel bag on the floor, his dark eyes scanning Darius's bruised face. "You look like hell," he said, clapping Darius on the shoulder, careful not to hit the tender spots. Darius didn't smile. "Good to see you too," he said, voice low, steady. Jamal pulled a laptop from his bag, setting it up on the coffee table, its screen flickering to life. "Saw the video on the plane," he said, fingers already flying across the keys. "That cop's got a death wish picking a fight with you." Darius sat beside him, the couch creaking under his weight. "He's not just a cop," he said, "he's a symptom. I need everything you can find on Victor Grayson, history, complaints, dirt." Jamal nodded, his grin fading. "Already on it," he said. "Let's peel this bastard open." Jamal's skills were a relic of their SEAL days, hacking insurgent networks in dusty outposts, turning data into weapons. Now, he turned that talent on Grayson, pulling up police records, citizen complaints, anything the Detroit PD might have buried. Within an hour, they had a stack of files, digital ghosts of Grayson's past. 3 excessive force reports from black men in the last 5 years, all dismissed with vague notes about insufficient evidence. A bar fight where he'd shattered a guy's jaw, no charges filed. A pattern of brutality, cloaked in bureaucracy, each case swept under the rug by someone higher up. Who's protecting this guy? Darius muttered, scrolling through a complaint from a mechanic who'd claimed Grayson beat him during a traffic stop, only for the file to vanish from public record. Jamal leaned back, cracking his knuckles. "Someone with juice," he said. This ain't just one dirty cop, D, it's a machine. Darius's gut twisted, the pieces clicking into place. He thought he'd struck first, exposing Grayson with that viral video, turning public eyes on a thug in uniform. Could he really take this man down with shame alone? The night deepened, shadows stretching across the room as Darius paced, his mind racing. The video had sparked protests downtown, chants of justice for Darius echoing through the streets, but Grayson wouldn't just slink away. What happens when a man like that gets cornered? Darius stopped, staring at the city skyline, its jagged edges lit by flickering neon. He'd seen Grayson's type before, overseas, petty tyrants who thrived on fear, who lashed out harder when their power wobbled. He needed more than outrage, he needed leverage, something to hit Grayson where it hurt. Jamal's voice broke his thoughts. "Got a lead," he said, pointing at the screen. "Internal memo encrypted. Mentions Grayson by badge number. Looks like he's got friends in high places." Darius leaned in, the words blurring into a promise of truth. He thought he had the upper hand, the world watching, Grayson's name trending like a curse. Was this the moment he'd turn the tide? Midnight came fast, the city's pulse slowing, but Darius's hadn't. He stepped outside, needing air, the cold biting his bruised ribs as he leaned against his car, a black sedan parked in the alley. The protests had quieted, but the tension lingered thick as fog. He replayed the courtroom, Grayson's boot, the silence of a system that let it happen. He'd survived worse, ambushes in hostile lands, but this felt personal, a wound that wouldn't close. His phone buzzed, a text from Jamal. "Digging deeper, stay sharp." Darius pocketed it, his breath clouding in the chill. When headlights flared at the alley's mouth, he tensed, instincts kicking in, but it was too late. Tires screeched. A van roared up, and 4 figures spilled out, masked, armed, moving like they'd rehearsed this. Darius ducked behind his car, heart pounding, but a 5th figure stepped from the shadows, Grayson, his smirk visible even in the dark. "Thought you'd embarrass me," he snarled, tossing a baggie of white powder into Darius's front seat. "You're done, Seal." The masks closed in, batons raised, but Darius rolled, grabbing a loose brick from the pavement, slamming it into one attacker's knee. The man crumpled, howling, but Grayson barked orders, and the others swarmed. Darius fought, fists and elbows flying, SEAL training turning chaos into precision, but there were too many. A baton cracked his shoulder, pain searing through him, and he stumbled, blood dripping onto the asphalt. Grayson laughed, planting the drugs with theatrical flair, then dialed his radio. "Got a tip," he said, voice smug. "Dangerous ex-con, armed. And dealing. Send SWAT." Darius broke free, sprinting into the night as sirens wailed in the distance, his car now a crime scene, his hope shredded. How do you fight a man who turns your own life into a lie? The city blurred past as Darius ran, ducking into a side street, his lungs burning, his side screaming. He found a payphone, rare in Detroit, and called Jamal, voice ragged. "They hit me, planted drugs, SWAT's coming." Jamal cursed, his calm cracking. "Get to the safe spot," he said. "I'll meet you." Darius hung up, moving fast, the wail of sirens growing louder, a net tightening around him. He reached his apartment just as red and blue lights flooded the block, SWAT vans rolling in like tanks. He grabbed a go bag from under his bed, years of readiness paying off, and slipped out the back window as boots thundered up the stairs. Glass shattered, shouts echoed, his home torn apart by men who didn't care about truth. He hit the ground, running, the night swallowing him, but not before he saw Caleb's photo on the floor, trampled by muddy boots, hauled off as evidence. Darius crouched in an alley 3 blocks away, watching the chaos unfold, his apartment gutted, neighbors peering from windows too scared to speak. The SWAT team dragged out furniture, weapons drawn, a show for the cameras now arriving. Grayson stood front and center, spinning his tale for the press, a decorated officer taking down a threat. Darius's phone buzzed, a news alert, the fake. Headline screaming, "Navy SEAL turns drug dealer, SWAT raid in progress." His stomach dropped, the lie so bold it almost felt real. Who believes a black man over a cop with a story this slick? He thought the video had given him power, that Grayson's arrogance would be his downfall, But now he was the hunted Caleb collateral damage in a game he hadn't signed up for. Jamal found him an hour later, pulling up in a beat-up truck, his face grim. "They've got Caleb in solitary now," he said, tossing Darius a burner phone. "Grayson's playing dirty, but we've got his scent." Darius climbed in, the truck rattling as they sped off, the city's lights fading behind them. He'd struck back with that video, turned Grayson into a villain for the world to see. But Grayson had countered with a brutality Darius hadn't expected, a trap so tight it choked out hope. What kind of system lets a man like that rewrite reality? This wasn't just personal anymore, it was a war, and Darius was out of moves, or so Grayson thought. Comment number 1 if you think Grayson's gone too far, hit like if you're rooting for Darius to fight back, and subscribe. Because this battle's just heating up. Can Darius outsmart a cop who's turned the law into a weapon, or will Grayson's next move bury him for good? Darius Kane slumped against the peeling wall of a rundown motel on Detroit's east side, the neon sign outside buzzing faintly, casting a sickly green glow through the blinds. His shoulder burned where the baton had struck, a purple welt blooming under his torn shirt, but he ignored it, his focus razor-sharp despite the exhaustion clawing at him. The SWAT raid had turned his life into rubble, his apartment a crime scene. Caleb locked in solitary, and the news painting him as a drug-dealing thug. He'd escaped with nothing but his go-bag and Jamal's truck, now parked a block away under a tarp. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and mildew, the bed sagging under a thin blanket, but it was a lifeline, a shadow to hide in while the city hunted him. He checked his burner phone, no signal yet, waiting for Jamal to ping him with an update. Grayson had struck hard, planting drugs, spinning lies, but Darius wasn't done. He'd faced worse odds in hostile lands, and he'd clawed his way out every time. Could this be different? The motel's cracked mirror reflected a man he barely recognized, eyes sunken, jaw tight, blood crusted at the corner of his mouth from the alley fight. He splashed water on his face, the cold jolt waking him fully, then sat at the rickety table, spreading out what little he had, a notepad, a pen, his military ID still smeared with alley dirt. Jamal had texted before the signal dropped. "Digging. Into Grayson's boss, stay low." Darius traced a finger over the ID, 16 years of service reduced to a prop in Grayson's twisted play. The video of the courtroom kick had gone viral, protests swelling downtown, chants echoing through the night. But Grayson's counterattack had flipped the script. Now Darius was the villain, a black man who dared to stand up, only to be crushed by a system that thrived on silence. He needed a move, something to shift the tide, and he needed it before Grayson tightened the noose. A faint knock rattled the door, 3 quick taps, Jamal's signal. Darius opened it, letting his friend slip inside, a backpack slung over one shoulder, his face etched with urgency. "Got something big," Jamal said, dropping the bag and pulling out his laptop. "Grayson's not freelancing. He's tied to Captain Leonard Price, precinct head, 6-figure salary, but a lifestyle that doesn't match." Darius leaned in, the screen glowing with bank records, offshore accounts, payments labeled consulting, but timed with dropped complaints against Grayson. "Price buries the dirt," Jamal said, voice low. "Grayson's his attack dog, keeps the streets in line, black folks especially." Darius's fist clenched, the pieces snapping into place. Price wasn't just a cog, he was the engine, a man who turned badges into shields for profit. This could break them, Darius thought, a spark of hope flickering. Could he trust anyone with this? He scribbled a name on the notepad. Judge Evelyn Harper, the woman who'd presided over Caleb's case, who'd faltered when Grayson attacked, but hadn't fully folded. She'd seemed shaken, her gavel trembling as she'd ordered Darius out. Maybe she'd listen. Maybe she'd see the rot beneath her bench. "I'll take it to her," Darius said, standing despite the pain shooting through his ribs. Jamal frowned, grabbing his arm. "You're a fugitive, man," he said. "One step outside, and they'll have you in cuffs or a grave." Darius shook him off, eyes hard. "I've got no choice," he said. "Caleb's in there, and this is bigger than me now." Jamal relented, handing him a hoodie from the bag. "Cover your face," he said. "I'll keep digging." Darius pulled the hood up, the fabric rough against his skin, and slipped out into the night, the motel's hum fading behind him. The streets were alive. Even at this hour, cars rumbling past, distant sirens slicing the air. Darius kept to the shadows, his SEAL training guiding every step, avoiding streetlights blending into the city's pulse. He reached Harper's brownstone in Midtown, a quiet block of brick homes, her porch light glowing soft amber. He'd found her address in Caleb's case file, a detail he'd memorized before the raid. He climbed the steps, his knock firm but discreet, praying she'd hear him out. The door creaked open, Harper peering out, her grey hair pulled back, eyes widening at the sight of him. "Mr. Kane," she whispered, glancing down the street. "What are you doing here?" Darius kept his voice steady, urgent. "I've got proof," he said, holding up the burner phone with Jamal's files loaded. "Grayson's not alone. Captain Price is running a racket, burying complaints, framing people like me, like Caleb." Harper's face paled, her hand trembling on the knob. "Come inside," she said, stepping back. The living room was warm, bookshelves lining the walls, a faint scent of lavender hanging in the air. Harper sat across from him, her robe pulled tight, listening as Darius laid it out. Price's accounts, Grayson's violence, the pattern of erased lives. She flipped through the files on his phone, her breath catching at the numbers, the dates, the names of black men silenced by a precinct she'd trusted. "This is damning," she said, voice shaking. "I'll call a hearing, emergency, session, tomorrow morning." Darius exhaled, a weight lifting, the first real win since Grayson's boot hit his ribs. He thought he'd found an ally, a crack in the system he could pry open. "Thank you," he said, standing to leave. Harper nodded, her gaze firm. "Be at the courthouse by 8, she said. "We'll get this on record." He slipped out, the night colder now, his steps lighter as he headed back, cutting through a narrow alley to avoid patrols. Victory felt close. Harper's promise a lifeline for Caleb, a blade to cut Grayson down. But the alley darkened, headlights flaring behind him, a pickup truck screeching to a halt. 4 men piled out, faces masked, bats and pipes in hand, Grayson's bulk unmistakable among them. Ambush, Darius realized, his heart slamming against his chest. Grayson stepped forward, his smirk a jagged scar in the dim light. "You think you're smart, huh?" he growled, twirling a bat. "Price doesn't like loose ends." Darius dodged the first. "Swing!" His training kicking in, but the numbers overwhelmed him. A pipe cracked his knee, sending him to the ground, asphalt biting his palms. Another blow slammed his back, air rushing from his lungs, and Grayson's boot found his face, blood exploding across his vision. They didn't stop, blows raining down, ribs cracking, skin splitting, each hit a message. "You don't win here." Darius curled, protecting his head, his mind screaming through the pain. How did they know? Grayson knelt, grabbing his hair, yanking his head up. "Tell your little video fans you're done," he hissed, then slammed Darius's face into the pavement. The world spun, darkness clawing at the edges, but he heard Grayson laugh, a sound that burned deeper than the bruises. They dragged him to a dumpster, tossing him in like trash, his body crumpling among the stench of rot. Footsteps faded, the truck roaring off, leaving him broken, blood pooling beneath him. He thought he'd won with Harper, thought the truth would shield him, but Grayson's crew had turned it into a slaughter. Hours later, Jamal found him, pulling him from the dumpster, his face a mask of rage and fear. "Jesus, D," he muttered, hoisting him into the truck, driving fast to a safe house, an old garage on the city's edge. Darius coughed blood, his voice a rasp. "Harper," he said. They knew. Jamal's grip tightened on the wheel. "She sold you out," he said, "or they've got her scared. Either way, we're deeper in it now." The safe house was bare, concrete floors, a cot, a sink, but it was shelter. Jamal cleaned Darius's wounds, stitching a gash on his brow with a field kit, every touch a reminder of how close he'd come to dying. The news flickered on a small TV, a report framing the alley as a gang attack, Darius's name tied to it, another lie to bury him. Harper's hearing was off, her office silent when Jamal called, her promise shattered. Darius lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, every breath agony, every thought a blade. He'd trusted the law, trusted Harper's shaken resolve, but the system had bitten back, harder, crueler. Grayson and Price, a tandem of venom no video could topple. Caleb was still in a cell, solitary now, a cage within a cage, and Darius was a ghost, hunted, beaten, his leverage gone. He'd thought he could strike from the shadows, use truth as a weapon, but Grayson's ambush had flipped the board, leaving him checkmated in a game he'd barely begun. The city outside buzzed with rumors, protests faltering under the weight of new lies. And Darius knew this wasn't the end, it was a warning. Price's machine wouldn't stop, and neither could he, not yet. Darius Kane lay on the cot in the safe house, a cramped garage on Detroit's outskirts, the concrete floor cold against his boots, his body a map of bruises and cuts from Grayson's alley ambush. The dim bulb overhead flickered, casting jagged shadows across the walls, the air thick with the tang of motor oil and antiseptic Jamal had smeared on his wounds. His ribs screamed with every shallow breath, his knee swollen where the pipe had struck, but his mind burned brighter than the pain, replaying Harper's betrayal, Grayson's smirk, the news calling him a gang thug. Caleb was still in solitary, a pawn in a game Darius hadn't seen coming, and the city outside buzzed with confusion, protests waning under the weight of lies. He'd thought Judge Harper was a lifeline, a crack in the system he could wedge open, but she'd crumbled or been crushed, leaving him bleeding in a dumpster. Now he was a fugitive, a ghost in his own city, and Grayson's crew was tightening the net. Jamal hunched over his laptop at a folding table, the screen's blue glow carving lines into his tired face, his fingers tapping a relentless rhythm. Darius forced himself upright, wincing as his stitches pulled, and shuffled over, the cot creaking behind him. "What have you got?" he rasped, voice rough from the beating. Jamal didn't look up, his eyes locked on the data scrolling past. "Bigger than Price," he said, voice low, urgent. "Grayson's tied to Titan Enforcement, private security firm, big contracts with the city." Darius leaned closer, the name sparking a memory from his SEAL days, a shadowy outfit linked to dirty ops overseas. "Titan's muscle," he muttered, scanning. The screen, payments from Titan to Price's accounts, dates matching dropped complaints, arrests, disappearances. Jamal nodded, pulling up a grainy photo of a Titan exec, shaking hands with Price at a gala. "They profit off locking people up," he said. "Black folks mostly. Wrongful arrests, padded stats, Titan gets the cleanup contracts." Darius's gut twisted, the scope of it sinking in. A machine that didn't just protect Grayson, it fed him. A network, built on broken lives. He'd seen corruption before, warlords skimming aid, officials pocketing blood money. But this was home, Detroit, his city, chewing up people like Caleb for cash. "How deep does it go?" he asked, his mind racing, piecing together Grayson's swagger, Price's pull, the ambush's precision. Jamal clicked another file, a classified memo from his old military contacts. "Deep," he said. "Titan's got hooks in the mayor's office, council, even feds." Darius exhaled, a spark igniting in his chest, the kind he'd felt before impossible missions. He'd been playing defense, dodging Grayson's blows, but this was a target, a beast he could hit. He needed more, something concrete, something to blow it wide open. He grabbed the burner phone, dialing a number he hadn't touched in years, Lieutenant Colonel Regina Miles, a SEAL commander who'd saved his life in Somalia, now retired, but still connected. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp, familiar. "Kane," she said, a hint of warmth cutting through her steel. "Saw your face all over the news. What's the play?" Darius didn't waste time. "Titan Enforcement," he said. "They're framing me running a racket with Detroit PD. I need intel off-book." Regina paused, the line crackling with silence. Then, "I'll dig," she said. "Give me 12 hours. Stay alive till then." She hung up, and Darius felt a flicker of hope, Regina's word as solid as granite. He'd tapped into a lifeline, a chance to turn the tables. But 12 hours was a lifetime with Grayson on his tail. Jamal kept working, pulling threads while Darius paced, his limp easing as adrenaline dulled the pain. Regina called back at dawn, her voice tighter now, urgent. "Titan's a hydra," she said. "They've got a black site in Detroit, old factory, holding people off the books, funding it with city money funneled through Price. Grayson's their enforcer, keeps the pipeline flowing. Darius's blood ran cold, picturing Caleb in a cell or worse, shipped to some hole Titan controlled. He thought he'd hit Grayson with the video, shaken Price with Harper, but this was bigger, a monster with teeth in every shadow. Regina sent. Coordinates, a derelict plant 10 miles north, and a warning, "They'll kill to protect it, Kane, watch your back." He hung up, the plan forming, a strike at Titan's heart to expose them all. He needed eyes on the outside, someone to amplify this beyond Detroit's streets. Tara Brooks, a local reporter who'd covered Caleb's case, came to mind, her byline sharp, her stories fearless. He'd seen her at the courthouse, scribbling notes, her brown eyes catching his before Grayson's boot landed. Jamal tracked her down, a burner call to her desk at the Free Press, and she agreed to meet, her voice wary but curious. They rendezvoused at a diner off 8 Mile, the kind with chipped mugs and grease-stained menus. Tara sliding into the booth across from Darius, her notepad out, pen poised. "You're a wanted man," she said, studying his battered face. "Why should I trust you?" Darius slid the phone over, Titan's files open. "Because this is bigger than me," he said. She read, her breath catching, and nodded. "I'll run it," she said, "but it'll take time to verify." The story hit the airwaves that night, Tara's voice cutting through the static on a late broadcast. Titan enforcement linked to police corruption, wrongful arrests, a private firm, profiting off Detroit's poorest. Protests erupted again, louder, angrier, crowds clogging Woodward Avenue, signs demanding justice, Grayson's name a curse on every tongue. Darius watched from the safe house, the TV flickering, his chest swelling with something close to triumph. He thought he'd won, the truth a hammer smashing Titan's facade. Grayson's leash slipping as the city roared. Price would squirm, Titan would scramble, and Caleb might get a shot at freedom. He leaned back, ribs aching but spirit lifting, the first real blow he'd landed since the courtroom. Then the burner rang, an unknown number, and Darius's gut dropped. He answered, silence stretching before a distorted voice crackled through. "You think you're clever, Seal?" it said, cold, mechanical. "Check the news." He flipped the channel, and there it was, a breaking report. Caleb Bell, nephew of fugitive Darius Kane, escapes custody, considered dangerous. Footage showed a grainy clip of a figure in an orange jumpsuit slipping through a jail fence. But Darius knew Caleb's frame, his gait, and this wasn't him. His phone buzzed again, a video file from the same number, and he opened it. Bile, rising as Caleb's face filled the screen, bruised, gagged, a Titan thug holding a knife to his throat. "Retract the story," the voice said, "or he's dead by morning." The feed cut, leaving Darius staring at darkness, his victory ash in his mouth. He slammed the phone down, the table rattling, Jamal jumping up, eyes wide. "What's happening?" he demanded. But Darius couldn't speak. The image of Caleb seared into him, the boy he'd sworn to protect now a hostage in Titan's grip. The protests outside meant nothing, Tara's story a spark snuffed out by a blade at his nephew's neck. He'd thought he'd struck gold, exposing Titan's rot, rallying the city, but they'd hit back harder, crueler, turning his win into a nightmare. Grayson wasn't in the video, but his stench was all over it. Price's shadow looming, Titan's claws sinking deeper. Darius grabbed his bag, jaw set, a fire raging where hope had been. They wanted him to fold, to beg, but he'd fought worse. Odds in worse places. He'd find Caleb or die trying. The safe house felt smaller now, the walls pressing in as Darius checked his gear. A pistol from Jamal's stash, a knife strapped to his ankle, his mind mapping the factory Regina had flagged. Titan had escalated, taken it personal, and he'd meet them head-on. Jamal grabbed his arm, voice fierce. "You can't go alone," he said. But Darius shook him off. "I have to," he said. "They've got Caleb, and I'm the one they want." He stepped into the night, the city a battlefield. His body battered but unbroken, the truth his only weapon now turned against him. Comment number 1 if you think Titan's gone too far with Caleb. Hit like if you believe Darius can save him. And subscribe because this fight's about to explode. What happens when a SEAL storms a black site to rescue his own? And will Titan's next move break him for good? Darius Kane crouched in the shadows of a rusted chain-link fence, the night air thick with the stench of diesel and decay, his eyes locked on the abandoned factory 10 miles north of Detroit's heart. The coordinates Regina had sent burned in. His mind, a Titan enforcement black site, a concrete tomb where Caleb was held, a knife at his throat unless Darius bowed to their demands. His body ached, ribs cracked, knee throbbing, but he pushed it down, SEAL training turning pain into fuel. The video of Caleb's bruised face looped in his head, the distorted voice echoing, "Retract the story, or he's dead." Tara's broadcast had lit a fire. Protests raging downtown, Grayson's name a rallying cry, but Titan had snuffed his triumph with one savage move. He gripped the pistol Jamal had given him, the weight steadying his shaking hands, and scanned the perimeter. Floodlights, slicing through the dark, guards patrolling with rifles slung low. This was his shot, his counterstrike, and he'd tear this place apart to get Caleb back. The factory sprawled across a weed-choked lot, its brick walls crumbling, windows boarded, a relic of Detroit's industrial past, now a cage for Titans. Dirty work. Darius counted 12 guards, their movements sloppy, overconfident, assuming no one would dare hit them here. He slipped wire cutters from his bag, snipping the fence with silent precision, each clip a heartbeat in the stillness. The hole was just wide enough, and he crawled through, gravel biting his palms, his hoodie snagging on jagged metal. He stayed low, darting behind a stack of rotting pallets, the guards' chatter drifting over, casual, cruel. "Heard he's some hotshot SEAL," one said, laughing. "Won't matter when we're done with him." Darius's jaw tightened, their arrogance a gift, a crack he'd exploit. He mapped the layout, a loading bay to the east, a side door to the west, and a rusted fire escape climbing the north wall. Which way in? He chose the fire escape, its creaking steps a risk he'd take, the north side shadowed by a leaning smokestack. He climbed, each rung testing his battered knee, the pistol tucked in his waistband, a knife strapped to his ankle glinting faintly. At the top, he pried open a window, the wood splintering under his grip, and dropped into a dusty hall, the air stale, heavy with the tang of rust and sweat. Voices echoed from deeper inside, and he moved, silent as a ghost, hugging the walls. His training a second skin. He passed locked rooms, muffled groans leaking through, other prisoners Titan had swallowed, but Caleb was the mission, the only one he could save tonight. A guard rounded the corner, a stocky man with a buzz-cut, rifle dangling, and Darius struck, slamming his elbow into the man's throat, dropping him without a sound. He dragged the body into a closet, stripping the radio, its static crackling softly as he listened. 2 on the roof, 4 in the pit. The pit. That's where they'd keep Caleb. He descended a stairwell, the steps slick with grime, the factory's belly opening into a cavernous space. Steel beams overhead, a concrete floor stained dark. 4 guards stood around a chain link. Cage Caleb inside slumped against the bars, his face swollen, blood crusted on his lip. Darius's chest seized, rage flooding him, but he held it, counting weapons, 2 rifles, 2 shotguns, a 5th guard pacing with a pistol. He needed a diversion, something to scatter them, and spotted a fuse box on the wall, wires dangling like veins. He crept closer, the guard's laughter masking his steps, one joking about Caleb's escape video, another mimicking his pleas. Darius flipped the box open, yanked a wire, and the lights died, plunging the pit into black, shouts erupting as he moved. The firefight was chaos. Darius a shadow among shadows, his pistol barking, each shot precise, SEAL instincts guiding him. Through the dark, he dropped the first guard with a headshot, blood spraying the bars, Caleb flinching inside. The second swung a shotgun, but Darius rolled, firing twice, the man collapsing with a gurgle. Flashlights flared, beams slicing the air, and he ducked behind a crate, shotgun blast splintering wood inches from his head. He lobbed the dead guard's radio, its squawk drawing fire, and flanked the third, snapping his neck with a twist. The crack lost in the gunfire. The 4th charged, rifle raised, but Darius tackled him, driving his knife into the man's chest, hot blood soaking his hand. The 5th bolted, screaming into his comms, "Back up now," and Darius shot him in the back. Silence falling as the body hit the floor. He rushed to the cage, Caleb's eyes wide, terrified but alive. "Darius," he croaked, voice breaking, and Darius forced the lock with a pry bar from a guard's belt, metal screeching as it gave. He pulled Caleb out, slinging his arm over his shoulder, the boy's weight heavy, his breath shallow. "We're leaving," Darius said, firm, no room for doubt. They staggered up the stairs, alarms blaring now, the factory waking like a beast roused from sleep. Guards poured from side rooms, boots pounding, and Darius fired, dropping two, their bodies tumbling down the steps. He dragged Caleb through a loading bay, bullets pinging off steel, and kicked open a rusted door, the night air hitting them like a slap. They ran or stumbled, Caleb's legs weak, Darius's knee buckling, but he pushed, the truck 100 yards off, freedom so close he could taste it. Headlights flared, a Titan SUV screeching from the lot, cutting them off. 3. Men leaping out, rifles up, Grayson's voice barking, "End of the line, Kane!" Darius shoved Caleb behind a dumpster, returning fire, glass shattering as the SUV's windshield blew out. He hit one, the man crumpling, but Grayson ducked, his rifle spitting rounds, concrete exploding near Darius's feet. Caleb whimpered, and Darius threw his last clip into the pistol, emptying it, the second man dropping, blood pooling under the truck. Grayson retreated, cursing, and Darius seized the gap, hauling Caleb to the truck Jamal had left, keys still in the ignition. He floored it, tires screaming, the factory shrinking in the rear view, Grayson's silhouette shrinking with it. They'd made it, Caleb safe, Titan bleeding, and Darius let himself breathe. The city lights ahead, a promise of victory. Protests swelled louder that night, Tara's story looping on every channel, Grayson's name a wildfire, hashtags flooding social media, justice for Caleb trending nationwide. Darius cleaned Caleb's cuts in a new safe house, a basement flat Jamal had secured, the boy's sobs fading to silence, his trust in Darius unbroken despite the hell. He thought he'd turned the tide, rescued his nephew, struck Titan where it hurt, the world watching as Grayson's empire shook. Caleb slept finally, and Darius stood guard, the TV muttering about heroic fugitive, his chest swelling with hard-won pride. He'd outsmarted them, beaten the odds, a seal against a machine, and won, or so he believed. Then the TV cut to breaking news, a stern anchor's voice slicing the quiet. FBI issues alert. Darius Kane linked to terrorist plot. Factory raid. Our cover for sabotage. Darius froze, the screen flashing grainy footage of the factory, now a smoking ruin, Titan claiming he'd planted bombs, evidence found in the wreckage. Helicopters thumped overhead, their searchlights sweeping Detroit, sirens rising like a chorus of doom. Caleb stirred, murmuring, "What's happening?" But Darius couldn't answer, his triumph ashes in his throat. Titan had flipped it, turned, his rescue into a lie too big to fight, the FBI on his tail, the city a trap. He'd saved Caleb, shaken Grayson, but they'd countered with a monster of a frame-up, making him a hunted man across the nation. The truck's engine still ticked. Outside, and he grabbed his bag, mind racing, the war far from over. Darius Kane sat on the warped porch of a rural cabin, 30 miles west of Detroit, the night cloaking him in a stillness that felt like a lie, the distant thump of helicopters, a relentless reminder of the hunt closing in. Caleb slept inside, sprawled on a threadbare couch, his face bruised but peaceful, a boy rescued from Titan's claws just hours ago. The truck rested under a tarp beside the cabin, its engine cold, Jamal's burner phone buzzing faintly in Darius's hand with a single message, "Safe house compromised, moving now." The factory raid had been a triumph. Caleb freed, Grayson's name plastered across every screen, protests choking Detroit streets, but Titan's counterstrike had turned it sour, branding Darius a terrorist, the FBI scouring the city for a man they'd painted as a monster. His ribs ached, his knee pulsed, but he ignored it, SEAL instincts keeping him sharp, scanning the tree line for shadows that didn't belong. He'd won a battle, hadn't he? Jamal arrived at dawn, his truck rattling up the dirt path, dust swirling. In the weak light, Tara Brooks beside him, her notepad clutched tight, eyes wide with a mix of fear and resolve. Darius met them at the door, ushering them in, the cabin's wooden walls creaking as they settled around a scarred table. Caleb stirred, mumbling, but didn't wake. His trust in Darius, a fragile anchor. Jamal booted his laptop, its hum cutting, the silence, and Tara set up a recorder, her voice steady despite the stakes. "We've got to hit back," she said, tapping her pen. That terrorist story's garbage, and people know it. Darius nodded, his jaw tight. Titan's desperate, he said, but they've got the feds fooled. Jamal pulled up encrypted files, his fingers dancing over the keys. Found the thread, he said, voice low. Titan's servers, hacked last night. Payments to Captain Price, a councilman, named Victor Hensley, laundering cash through city contracts. Darius leaned in, the screen a maze of numbers and names, each line a dagger aimed at Titan's heart. Hensley, a wiry man with slick hair and a politician's grin, had chaired the council's public safety committee, his signature on budgets that funneled millions to Titan. Price's cut was smaller, but the dates aligned, every payout tied. To a buried complaint, a framed arrest, a life erased. How does a councilman sleep knowing he's selling out his own city? Darius muttered, his mind racing, connecting Hensley to Price, Price to Grayson. A web of greed and power spun over Detroit's poorest streets. Jamal smirked, a rare flash of triumph. We've got the receipts, he said, and Tara's got the mic. She nodded, already drafting, her words sharp as bullets. This airs tonight, she said. National news, not just local. Darius felt a surge, the kind he'd known before missions turned the tide. A false dawn breaking over this endless night. They worked fast, Tara weaving the data into a story, Jamal scrubbing the files for anything missed, Darius pacing, his limp easing as adrenaline surged. By noon they had it, a broadcast ready to shred Titan's lies, expose Hensley's hands in the pot, and drag Price into the light. Tara called her editor, voice firm. I've got the scoop of the decade. Run it prime time. The cabin buzzed with purpose, Caleb waking to the clatter, his eyes clearing as Darius knelt beside him. We're getting you out, he said, squeezing his nephew's shoulder. Caleb nodded, faint hope flickering in his gaze, a boy who'd seen too much but still believed in his uncle. The TV flickered on, a local station looping the terrorist claim, but Darius ignored it, the real fight now in their hands. 8 o'clock, hit, and Tara's story aired, her face filling screens across the nation. Titan enforcement, Captain Leonard Price, and Councilman Victor Hensley, linked to a corruption ring profiting off wrongful arrests, evidence uncovered by fugitive Darius Kane. The cabin's silence broke with her words, Jamal pumping a fist, Caleb's jaw dropping, Darius standing stock still, watching the world shift. Protests exploded anew, Detroit's streets flooding with bodies, chants of "Free Darius" drowning. Out the sirens. Social media erupted, screenshots of the files spreading like wildfire. Grayson's suspension announced mid-broadcast, his badge stripped pending investigation. Darius exhaled, a weight lifting, the city's roar a balm on his battered soul. He'd done it, hadn't he? Turned Titan's frame up into a noose around their necks. The night stretched, the cabin a fragile bubble as news vans swarmed Detroit, pundits dissecting Tara's report, activists demanding Hensley's resignation. Darius stepped outside, the cool air brushing his bruises, his mind daring to hope. Caleb safe, Grayson sidelined. The truth a tidal wave no one could stop. Jamal joined him, clapping his back, careful of the wounds. We got him, D, he said, voice thick with pride. Darius nodded, but his gut twitched, a seal's instinct whispering trouble beneath the victory. Grayson was down, Price exposed, but Hensley, the puppet master, hadn't spoken. His silence a shadow Darius couldn't shake. Could a man that deep in the game just fold? Morning broke, grey and heavy, the TV blaring a new headline. Darius Kane, rogue soldier, doctored records. Surface. Darius froze, the screen flashing military files. His SEAL missions twisted into lies, failed ops, dishonorable discharge, all fake but polished, stamped with Hensley's invisible hand. Tara cursed, slamming her recorder down, Jamal scrambling to trace the leak, but it was too late. The story hit like a bomb, protests faltering, voices turning. Was he lying all along? Trending fast. Darius's stomach sank, the cabin's walls closing in, his victory snatched by a smear so slick it felt real. Hensley's voice followed, a press conference live from City Hall, his tones smooth, regretful. I trusted Kane's story. But these records show a troubled man, a danger to us all, to us. The crowd behind him shifted, some booing, others nodding, doubt creeping in like poison. Darius grabbed the burner, dialing Regina, her voice sharp when she answered. "It's fabricated," she said, anger lacing her words, "but they've got it locked. In Pentagon backups, someone with pull." He hung up, the phone cracking in his grip. Hensley's player masterstroke, turning his service into a weapon against him. Jamal's laptop pinged, a new alert. Jamal Carter arrested, accomplice to Kane's terror plot. A mugshot flashing, his friend cuffed outside the safe house they'd abandoned. Darius's breath caught, isolation crashing over him. Caleb's eyes on him, wide, scared again. Tara packed her gear, voice trembling. "I'll fight this, but you're on your own now." She slipped out, the truck's rumble fading, leaving Darius and Caleb in a silence thicker than the night. He sat beside Caleb, the boy's hand shaking in his, the TV looping Hensley's lies, protests thinning as the city turned. He'd thought. He'd won. Exposed Titan's core, freed Caleb, broken Grayson, but Hensley had flipped it, a smear campaign so vast it drowned the truth. His allies were gone, Jamal in cuffs, Tara retreating, Regina powerless against forged steel. The cabin felt like a trap, helicopters circling closer, their blades a heartbeat in the sky. He'd struck Titan's nerve, shaken their empire, but they'd hit back with a lie that rewrote his life, leaving him a pariah in a war he couldn't outrun. Caleb whispered, "What now?" And Darius didn't answer, his mind a storm, the false dawn fading into a darkness he'd never faced before. Comment. Number 1 if you think Hensley's smear is pure evil. Hit like if you're still betting. On Darius to rise and subscribe, because this twist is just the start. Can a man stripped of everything still strike back, or will Titan's next blow bury him deeper than ever? Darius Kane stood alone in the cabin's dim kitchen, the wooden floor creaking under his boots. Caleb's shallow breaths the only sound breaking the suffocating quiet. The TV flickered in the corner, Hensley's smug face looping on every channel, his forged military records branding Darius a rogue, a liar, a threat. Jamal was in cuffs, Tara gone, Regina silenced by a system too vast to crack, and the protests that had roared for him now sputtered, drowned by doubt. His nephew slept fitfully on the couch, a blanket pulled tight, the boy he'd risked everything to save now tethered to a fugitive's fate. Darius's ribs throbbed, his knee pulsed, blood crusted on his brow from the alley beating, but the real pain was deeper, a hollow ache as the world turned its back. He'd thought Tara's story was the hammer, Grayson's suspension the nail, but Hensley had flipped it, a councilman's lie stripping him bare. He needed a move, one last strike, and he needed it now. The burner phone sat dead on the table, its battery drained, a lifeline severed. Darius grabbed his go-bag, checking the pistol, the knife, his mind mapping Detroit's sprawl, Hensley's. Mansion a beacon in the chaos. He'd seen it on news clips, a gated estate in Grosse Pointe, white columns and manicured lawns screaming wealth built on blood. If Hensley was the head, Darius would cut it off, force the truth from his lips. End this nightmare. He woke Caleb, his voice low, firm. "We're moving, stay close." The boy nodded, eyes wide but trusting, pulling on a hoodie as Darius led him to the truck. The night was thick, stars hidden by clouds, the helicopter hum fainter now, but he knew it wouldn't last. They drove, headlights off, dirt roads twisting through farmland, the city's glow a distant smear. Hensley's confession was the key, a recording to shatter his lies, and Darius would get it or die trying. Grosse Pointe loomed, its quiet streets a stark contrast to Detroit's grit, mansions hulking behind iron gates. Darius parked a block from Hensley's, the truck blending with shadows, and scoped the estate, floodlights bathing the lawn, cameras glinting on poles, 2 guards pacing the driveway. Caleb stayed low in the cab, his breath fogging the window, while Darius slipped out, hoodie up, moving like a phantom. He scaled a tree near the fence, branches groaning under his weight, and dropped into the yard, rolling to absorb the shock. On his bad knee. The guards didn't flinch, their radios crackling with static, and he crept closer, seal stealth guiding him past sensors, under windows, to a side door. He picked the lock, the click barely audible, and slipped inside. The mansion's silence heavy with opulence, marble floors, chandeliers, the stench of money. Hensley's office was upstairs, a guess based on news footage, and Darius climbed, each step a test of his battered body, the pistol cold in his hand. He found it, a mahogany door ajar, and pushed in, the room dark save for a desk lamp. Hensley hunched over papers, his wiry frame tense, a glass of bourbon trembling in his grip. He didn't hear Darius until the barrel pressed against his neck, a gasp escaping as he spun, eyes wide with terror. "Kane," he choked, spilling the drink, amber pooling on the desk. Darius kicked the chair out from under him, Hensley sprawling, and pinned him, knee on his chest, gun steady. "Talk," he growled, pulling a recorder from his pocket, thumbing it on. "Tell them everything, Titan, Price, Grayson, the arrests, the money." Hensley squirmed, sweat beading on his pale face, but Darius pressed harder, the recorder's red light blinking like an eye. "All right," he rasped, voice breaking. "I'll talk, just don't shoot." He spilled it, a flood of confession, Titan's contracts, Price's cut, Grayson's brutality, how they targeted black neighborhoods, framed men like Caleb for profit, buried complaints with cash and threats. Darius's blood boiled, each word a confirmation of the rot he'd fought, a truth he'd clawed for through beatings and lies. Hensley whimpered. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." But Darius didn't care, the recorder capturing every syllable, a weapon sharper than his gun. He thought he'd won, the tape a lifeline to clear his name, save Caleb, topple Titan's empire. Footsteps thundered downstairs, guards alerted by a tripped sensor Darius had missed, their shouts echoing up the stairwell. He yanked Hensley to his feet, gun at his back, and shoved him toward the window, the confession still rolling. "Move!" he barked, but Hensley stumbled, slowing him, and the door burst open, 3 guards rushing in, rifles up. Darius fired, dropping one, blood spraying the carpet, but the others returned shots, bullets chewing the desk, glass shattering. He dragged Hensley to the floor, rolling behind a bookshelf, returning fire, the second guard collapsing with a scream. The third bolted, calling for backup, and Darius hauled Hensley up, smashing the window with his elbow, the night air rushing in. He climbed out, pulling Hensley onto the roof, the recorder tucked safe in his pocket, and slid down a drain pipe, the councilman flailing behind him. They hit the ground running, alarms wailing, floodlights blinding, guards swarming the lawn as Darius dragged Hensley to the truck. Caleb flung the door open, eyes wild, and Darius shoved Hensley inside, peeling out as tires screeched, bullets pinging off the tailgate. He floored it, the mansion shrinking in the rear view, Hensley babbling, "You're dead, Kane. They'll kill. Just both." Darius ignored him, weaving through streets, the recorder burning a hole in his pocket, the confession his ticket out. He ditched the truck in an alley, hustling Caleb and Hensley into a vacant lot, and uploaded the audio to a cloud link Jamal had set up, sending it to Tara with a burner text, "Run this, now." The story hit the internet within hours. Hensley's voice spilling Titan's secrets, protests reigniting, the nation waking to the truth. Darius exhaled, thinking he'd broken the beast. His name half cleared, Caleb's freedom in sight. Then the ground shook, a boom splitting the night, smoke rising from the city's edge where the safe house stood. Darius's heart stopped, the TV in a nearby bar flickering to a new report. Explosion rocks Detroit. Fugitive Darius Kane blamed for bombing. Decoy found dead. Titan had struck, blowing the basement flat where Caleb was supposed to be, a body planted to seal the lie. News claimed Darius had orchestrated it. A terrorist unmasked. Hensley's confession twisted as coercion, the public turning again, screams of betrayal drowning the protests. Darius gripped Caleb, the boy trembling, alive but hunted. And Hensley laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "You can't win, Kane, they're too big." The recorder's truth was out, but Titan had countered with a blast that buried it, framing Darius as a murderer, his victory a mirage. He pulled Caleb into the shadows, Hensley stumbling behind, the city's glow a taunting lie as sirens wailed. Closer. The mansion break-in, the confession, the upload, all for nothing. Titan's retaliation a sledgehammer to his hope. He'd thought he'd reached the breaking point, forced Hensley to crack, but they'd cracked him instead, a bomb shredding. His last stand. leaving him a ghost in a world that despised him. Caleb clung to him, whispering, "Uncle, what do we do?" And Darius didn't answer, his mind a void, the recorder's weight mocking him. He'd struck Titan's core, exposed their king, but they'd hit back with a lie so monstrous it swallowed the truth whole. The safe house smoldered, a decoy's blood on his hands, and Darius stood at the edge, broken, alone, the war spiraling beyond his grasp. Darius Kane stumbled through Detroit's industrial wasteland. The night a shroud of smoke and ash, Caleb's hand trembling in his as they fled the vacant lot, Hensley's hollow laughter fading behind them. The safe house explosion still rang. In his ears, a decoy's death pinned on him, Titan's latest lie turning the city's rage against him. Hensley's confession, a raw, desperate truth uploaded to the world, had sparked a flicker of hope, protests flaring briefly, but the bombing snuffed it, news screaming, Kane's terror spree, the tape dismissed as coercion. His body was a wreck, ribs cracked, knee buckling, blood crusting his face from the mansion fight, but he pushed on, the weight of failure heavier than his wounds. Caleb's breaths came fast, scared. The boy he'd saved now a fugitive too, and Darius's allies were gone. Jamal locked up, Tara vanished, the cabin a memory. He'd hit Titan's core, forced Hensley to sing, but they'd struck back with a blast that broke him, leaving him cornered out of moves. They reached a derelict warehouse, its steel frame sagging, windows shattered, a tomb of rust and echoes. Darius kicked open a side door, ushering Caleb inside, the air thick with dust and the faint tang of gasoline. He barricaded the entrance with a rusted barrel, his pistol drawn, scanning the dark for threats, the city's distant sirens, a noose, tightening. Caleb slumped against a wall, his hoodie torn, eyes glassy with exhaustion, and Darius knelt beside him, voice low. "We're safe for now. Rest." Caleb nodded, curling up, but sleep didn't come, fear keeping him rigid. Darius stood, his mind racing. Hensley's tape out there, buried under Titan's lies, the world blind to the truth. He needed a way out, a spark to reignite the fight, but the warehouse felt like a grave, his options bleeding away. Footsteps crunched outside, deliberate, heavy, and Darius tensed, raising his gun, signaling Caleb to stay down. Shadows moved through the broken windows, 5 figures, rifles glinting. Grayson's bulk unmistakable in the lead, his voice a snarl cutting the night. "Found you, Kane, game's up." Darius's heart slammed. The warehouse a trap, Titan's hunters. Closing in, and he knew he was outgunned, his single pistol no match for their firepower. Grayson kicked the door, the barrel toppling, and stormed in. 4 mercenaries fanning out, their beams slicing the dark, pinning Darius against a stack of crates. He fired, the shot echoing, grazing a merc's arm, but they returned a barrage. Wood splintering, Caleb screaming as bullets chewed the floor. Darius dove, dragging Caleb behind a steel beam, his mind screaming, "This is it." The end he'd dodged in wars now here in Detroit. Then the air split, a roar of engines, floodlights blinding, as a black Humvee crashed through the warehouse wall. Tires screeching, guns blazing from its windows. The Merc spun, caught off guard, and 3 dropped, blood spraying as precise shots tore through them. Grayson ducked, cursing, firing wildly, but the Humvee's turret swung, pinning him down. A figure leapt out, tall, lean, her silver hair catching the light. Lieutenant Colonel Regina Miles, her voice barking over the chaos. "Kane, move!" Darius grabbed Caleb, sprinting to the vehicle, his knees screaming, as Regina's rogue unit, 4, ex-SEALs in tactical gear, laid cover fire, the last Merc crumpling in a heap. Grayson bolted, slipping into the night, his rifle abandoned, and Darius piled into the Humvee with Caleb, the engine roaring as they peeled out, the warehouse a smoking ruin behind them. Regina drove, her face carved from stone. The units, silence thick with purpose, their gear clinking softly. Darius caught his breath, Caleb clinging to him, and rasped, "How'd you find me?" Regina's eyes flicked to the rear view, cold, fierce. "Tracked your burner's last ping," she said, then hit Titan's comms, "Knew they'd hunt you here." She tossed him a tablet, its screen glowing with files, Titan's illegal ops overseas. Blacksite's arms deals all tied to Detroit's racket. "We've been watching them," she said, voice tight. You cracked it open, Kane gave us the in. Darius scrolled. The data a goldmine. Proof Titan wasn't just local. A global beast feeding on corruption. Grayson its pawn. Price its shield. Hensley its purse. He thought Regina's rescue was the win. Grayson on the run. Titan exposed deeper than ever. A lifeline to clear his name. They hit a safe house, a fortified bunker beneath a scrapyard. Steel doors slamming shut, the unit spreading out, weapons down, but eyes sharp. Regina briefed him, her tone clipped. "We've got a mole in Titan. Leaked this after your tape dropped," she said, tapping the tablet. "Grayson's arrested, precincts holding him, Price sweating. Hensley's on bail but cornered." Darius exhaled. A flicker of relief. The warehouse fight a close call turned triumph. Regina's crew a hammer to Titan's glass. Caleb sat on a cot, sipping water, his trust in Darius unbroken, and Darius dared to think it was over. The terrorist. Label peeling. Hensley's confession validated by this new intel. He cleaned his wounds, Regina's medic stitching his brow, the bunker's hum a cocoon against the storm outside. Grayson in cuffs, Titan bleeding, he'd survived the breaking point, hadn't he? Then the bunker's TV flared, a news alert slicing. The calm Darius Kane confesses to bombing. Video evidence surfaces. Darius froze, the screen showing him or a version of him in SEAL gear, voice distorted. "I planted the bomb, Titan's innocent." The footage grainy but damning, edited from stolen mission tapes. Hensley's final play. Regina cursed, slamming. "The table, it's fake but it's tight. Pentagon's disavowing us now." The unit tensed, radios crackling with orders to stand down, their rogue status revoked, Darius's hope gutted. Protests died, the city turning again. "Kane's a fraud," trending. Hensley's smirk back on every feed. "I warned you, he's unstable." Caleb's eyes welled, "Uncle," he whispered, and Darius couldn't answer. The tablet's truth drowned. By a lie so slick it stuck. Regina grabbed her gear, voice hard. "We're cut off, Kane. Feds'll raid us soon." She ordered the unit out, their faces grim, leaving Darius and Caleb in the bunker, a steel trap, now a cage. He sat, the TV looping his confession, Hensley's counter-strike a blade through his spine, Titan's reach choking even Regina's. Defiance. He'd thought her rescue was salvation, Grayson's arrest the endgame, but they'd flipped it, a smear so vast it buried him alive. The bunker's walls pressed in, Caleb's trust wavering, and Darius gripped the pistol, mind void, the unseen ally lost to a lie he couldn't outrun. He'd struck Titan's nerve, but they'd struck his soul, leaving him a fugitive in a world that saw only the mask they'd made. Comment number 1 if you think Hensley's fake video is the dirtiest move yet. Hit like if you're still rooting for Darius against all odds. And subscribe because this rollercoaster's nowhere near done. With Regina's crew gone and Grayson free, what's left for a man framed as the devil himself to fight with? Darius Kane stood in the bunker's steel belly, the air thick with the hum of dying lights. Caleb's small frame curled on the cot beside him, his breaths uneven with fear. The TV blared Hensley's forged video, Darius's confession, looping, a twisted echo of his voice claiming the bombing, Titan's innocence, the lie so polished it stuck like tar. Regina and her unit were gone, disavowed, the feds closing in and Detroit streets churned with chaos, protests fracturing under the weight of betrayal. His body was a ruin, ribs cracked, knee swollen, blood crusting his stitches, but his mind burned, SEAL resolve clawing through despair. Hensley had buried him, Grayson slipping free, Titan's grip tightening, but Darius wasn't done. He grabbed the tablet Regina had left, its files a lifeline, and shook Caleb awake, voice low. "We're not dead yet, we fight." The boy nodded, eyes wide, trusting through the storm. They slipped out, the scrapyard silent, the night a cloak of smoke and distant shouts, the city teetering on the edge. Darius led Caleb through alleys, avoiding patrols. The tablet clutched. Tight? Jamal's decrypted Titan files glowing on its screen, payments, contracts, Hensley's signature on every dirty deal. He needed a network, voices to amplify the truth, and remembered Lena, the paralegal who'd filmed the courtroom kick, her shaky video the spark that started this war. She'd vanished after the SWAT raid, but Jamal had her burner number, scribbled in the truck before his arrest. Darius found a payphone, rare in Detroit's decay, and dialed, his pulse thumping as it rang. Lena answered, voice wary. "Kane? You're alive." He didn't waste breath. "I've got Titan's guts," he said. "Hensley's fake. I need you to spread it." She paused, then, "I'm with people. We'll do it. Stay safe." Lena's network moved fast, a grassroots web of activists, coders, ex-cons, all scarred by Titan's hand, their phones lighting up with the files, screenshots flooding social. Media wanted Titan lies trending by dawn. Darius and Caleb hid in a burned-out storefront, glass crunching underfoot, the city's pulse rising as Lena's crew worked, the truth clawing back from Hensley's smear. News vans swarmed downtown, protesters clashing with riot cops, Molotovs. Arcing through the dark, Detroit erupting as the files spread, Hensley's confession resurfacing, Titan's overseas ops exposed. Darius watched from the shadows, Caleb's hand in his, the tablet's battery dying but its job done, a spark reigniting the fire he'd thought lost. He'd rallied the city, turned Titan's lie into a rallying cry, hadn't he? The precinct. Buzzed, Grayson in a cell. His suspension lifted after the fake video, but pressure mounted. Lena's leaks hitting like shrapnel, public fury boiling over. Darius hacked a police radio from a wrecked cruiser, static crackling as he listened. Grayson cutting a deal, voice smug. "I'll give you price, Hensley. Keep me clean." Darius's gut twisted, the cop flipping on Titan, testifying to save his skin, a crack in their armor. He thought it was the break, Grayson's betrayal a blade to slit Titan's throat, the feds forced to listen as Detroit burned, storefronts blazing, chants of justice for Kane shaking the night. Caleb's eyes gleamed, hope flickering, and Darius dared to believe the city's rage his shield. Grayson's words the key to unlock his chains. Then the radio flared, a new voice. "Grayson's out. Prison break. Titan op confirmed." Darius froze, the screen cutting to live footage, a jail wall breached. Grayson striding free, a Titan crew at his back, rifles gleaming. The camera swung, a black protester, young, barely 20, marching with a sign, "Free Darius," and Grayson raised his gun, firing point blank, blood blooming on the pavement, the crowd screaming as he smirked. "Kane's fault," he shouted, planting a knife by the body. Darius's breath stopped. Caleb gasping, the feed looping. Kane incites murder, the city's eruption flipping, chaos turning on him. Grayson's deal was a ruse, Titan's counterstrike a public slaughter, framing Darius as the devil. Pulling strings, flames licked the skyline. Riot cops retreating as looters smashed windows, the protesters' death a match to Detroit's powder keg. Darius dragged Caleb deeper into the storefront, glass shards biting his boots, the radio spitting updates, Kane's followers riot, city under siege. He'd rallied a network, exposed Titan's lies, thought Grayson's testimony would seal it, but they'd turned his strike into a massacre, the boy's blood on his name, not theirs. Caleb trembled. Why'd he do that? And Darius couldn't answer, the weight crushing him, Hensley's video, the files, all drowned by a single shot. The city burned for him, against him, a war he'd sparked, now a noose around his neck, Titan's cruelty outpacing his every move. He smashed the radio, silence falling. The storefront a fragile shell as flames danced outside, sirens wailing, helicopters thumping overhead. Darius checked the pistol, 3 rounds left, the knife still strapped to his ankle, his mind racing, for a way out, but the city's rage was a beast he couldn't tame. He'd thought Lena's push, Grayson's deal, would break Titan, free Jamal, clear Caleb. But they'd flipped it, a murder staged to bury him deeper, the truth a whisper in the roar. Caleb clung to him, eyes wet, and Darius stood, jaw set, the storefront's walls shaking as the night exploded, Detroit a battlefield he'd ignited but couldn't control. He'd struck Titan's nerve, but they'd struck its heart, and the city paid the price. Darius Kane crouched in the shattered storefront, glass crunching beneath his boots. Caleb pressed close as Detroit burned beyond the broken windows, flames painting the night a furious orange. The city's riots roared, sparked by Grayson's. Staged murder of the protester, The blame pinned on Darius, his name a curse on every tongue. Smoke stung his eyes, his ribs ached with every breath, his knee throbbed, but he gripped the pistol, 3 rounds left, the knife at his ankle a cold comfort. Caleb's face was pale, streaked with soot, his trust unshaken despite the chaos, and Darius knew this was it, the final stand, a chance to end Grayson and claw back the truth. The precinct was a mile away, a fortress amid the storm, where Grayson hid, Titan's pawn-turned-butcher, and Darius would face him one way or another. They moved, slipping through alleys choked with debris, looters smashing storefronts, riot cops retreating under a hail of bricks. Darius kept Caleb low, his SEAL instincts cutting a path through the madness, the precinct's silhouette rising against the flaming skyline, its lights flickering as power lines sparked. Sirens wailed, helicopters buzzed, but he tuned it out. His focus ablade. Grayson's smirk from the live feed burned into his mind, the blood on the pavement a debt he'd collect. They reached the precinct's edge, its brick walls scarred by Molotovs, windows barred, a skeleton crew holding the line. Darius spotted a side entrance, a steel door ajar, smoke billowing from within, and pulled Caleb through, the air thick with ash and the tang of burning rubber. Inside, the precinct was a war zone, desks overturned, papers smouldering, officers shouting over crackling radios, abandoning posts as the riots pressed in. Darius crept through, Caleb's hand in his, the chaos a shield, his target clear. Grayson's holding cell turned staging ground after his escape. He found it, a basement lockup, its bars bent from Titan's break, and there he was, Grayson, pacing, a rifle slung over his shoulder, barking orders to 2 Titan goons, their gear gleaming amid the ruin. Darius signaled Caleb to hide behind a filing cabinet, his voice a whisper, "Stay down no matter what." Caleb nodded, eyes wide, and Darius stepped out, pistol raised, the air electric as Grayson spun, his smirk twisting into a snarl. "You don't quit, do you, Kane?" The fight erupted. Grayson firing first, the rifles burst, chewing concrete as Darius dove, rolling behind a desk, his shot clipping Grayson's arm, blood spraying. The goons charged, one swinging a baton, the other drawing a pistol, and Darius met them, his knife slashing the baton man's thigh, dropping him with a howl, then tackling the shooter, slamming his head into the floor, the crack of skull on tile silencing him. Grayson roared, lunging, his bulk a battering ram, and they crashed, fists flying, Darius's ribs screaming as Grayson's elbow found them, blood bursting from his nose. He fought back, SEAL fury unleashed, slamming Grayson's face into the bars, teeth breaking, the rifle clattering free. Grayson staggered, spitting red, and Darius pinned him, knee on his throat, pistol at his temple. "You're done," he growled, pulling the recorder from his pocket, thumbing it on. Grayson thrashed, but Darius held firm, the recorder's light blinking. "Talk now, or I end it here." Grayson's eyes darted, panic cracking his bravado, and he choked out, "Titan's orders, price ran it, Hensley paid. I killed the kid to frame you, all of it." Darius's blood boiled, the confession raw, a mirror to Hensley's, a truth no lie. Could bury. He stood, dragging Grayson up, the precinct shaking as rioters breached the main floor, shouts echoing down. He found a working camera, precinct security fried but still live, and hacked it with a code Jamal had taught him, broadcasting Grayson's words to every screen in Detroit, the feed cutting through the chaos. Grayson confesses, Kane innocent. Titan slaughter exposed. The city froze, the riots pausing as faces turned to TVs, phones, the truth a thunderclap in the night. Darius thought he'd won, Grayson beaten, the confession leave, Titan's mask ripped off. He shoved the cop into the cell, locking it, Caleb rushing to his side, tears cutting through the soot on his face. The precinct's lights surged, power flickering back, and Darius heard boots, not rioters but feds, storming in, rifles up, voices barking, "Freeze, Kane." He raised his hands, Caleb clinging to him, the broadcast still rolling, Grayson's bloodied face a testament on every screen. The feds cuffed him, rough but hesitant, their eyes flickering to the feed, doubt creeping in. They hauled him out. The precinct a smouldering shell, rioters parting as the truth sank in, some cheering, others stunned, Detroit's pulse shifting under the weight of what they'd seen. The FBI raided Titan's HQ that hour, sirens screaming across the city. Files seized, Price arrested in his office, Hensley's mansion swarmed, Darius's strike hitting home. He sat in a holding cell, Caleb beside him, the feds silent as the broadcast looped. Grayson's confession undeniable, the terrorist label peeling away. Darius exhaled, blood dripping from his nose, the fight's toll sinking in. But relief flickered, the city waking to Titan's rot, his name half cleared. Caleb safe. He'd faced Grayson, ended him in that basement, thought it was over. The truth a shield no one could pierce. Then the TV flared. A new alert. Detroit water supply poisoned, bioweapon detected, Kane suspected. And his stomach dropped. The screen showing hazmat teams, panicked crowds, thousands sick. Hensley's voice pre-recorded. Kane's doing, he warned us. Darius's breath caught. Caleb gasping, the feds turning, guns rising again. The broadcast drowned by a new lie. Titan's final blow, a plague on the city he'd fought for. The cell felt smaller, the air sour with betrayal, Caleb's hand shaking. In his as the feds barked orders, hazmat sirens wailing outside. Darius's mind reeled. The fight with Grayson, the confession, the raid, all for nothing. Hensley's dying gasp, a bioweapon unleashed to frame him as a mass murderer. The precinct trembled, rioters returning, their cheers turning to screams, the city choking on poison. Titan's vengeance, a tidal wave no truth could stop. He'd thought he'd reached the end, broken Grayson's spine, freed Detroit's soul, but they'd countered with a horror beyond his reach, his victory a stepping stone to genocide. The feds dragged him up, cuffs biting, and Darius stood, jaw set, the war spiraling into a nightmare he couldn't outfight. Darius Kane sat in the precinct holding cell, the steel bench cold against his bruised back. Caleb huddled beside him, his small hands trembling as the TV blared outside. Detroit water crisis. Thousands sick, Kane's bioweapon blamed. The feds had cuffed him tight, their faces hard with suspicion. Grayson's confession still looping but drowned by Hensley's pre-recorded lie, a bioweapon poisoning the city, pinning Darius as the mastermind. His ribs throbbed, blood crusted, his nose from the basement fight. His knee pulsed but his mind raced, seal grit clawing through the chaos. The precinct hummed with panic. Hazmat teams swarming outside, sirens a relentless wail, and Caleb's eyes wide with terror, locked on him. "Uncle, what's happening?" Darius gripped his shoulder, voice steady despite the storm. "We fix this. I promise." He'd beaten Grayson, broadcast the truth, thought he'd won, but Titan's final strike had turned victory to ash. The cell door clanged, a fed barking, "Move, Kane, interrogation now," and they hauled him out. Caleb left behind, his cry cut off as the door slammed. Darius shuffled through the precinct, hazmat suits brushing past, radios crackling with casualty counts, hundreds vomiting, kids collapsing, the city choking on Hensley's poison. They shoved him into a room, concrete walls, a one-way mirror, two agents in suits glaring, their badges glinting under harsh lights. Agent Voss, a wiry man with a buzz cut, slammed a file down. "You're done, Kane. Water's toxic, people dying, your prints on the scene." Darius met his stare, jaw set. "It's Hensley, Titan's last play. Check Grayson's tape. It's real." Voss smirked. "Confession under duress doesn't clear you, this does." Tossing photos of a lab vials, a forged note in Darius's handwriting, all planted, a lie so tight it fit. Agent Ruiz, stocky, dark-eyed, leaned in. "Why'd you do it, Kane?" "Revenge, spite." Darius's blood boiled, the frame up a noose, racial venom dripping from every word. A black man branded a monster no truth could save. He thought of Caleb, alone, the city suffering, and pushed back. Hensley's lab. Find it. Test the source. "I'm clean." Voss laughed. "You're a terrorist, Kane. Feds don't chase ghosts." But Ruiz hesitated, eyes flickering, doubt cracking his steel. Darius seized it. "I've got allies. Tara Brooks, Regina Miles. They'll prove it. Let me out. I'll—" "Stop this." Voss scoffed, but Ruiz grabbed the radio. Check the lab angle now, and Darius exhaled. A sliver of hope in the abyss, thinking he'd turned them. The reckoning close. Tara burst into the precinct an hour later, her coat soaked, hair wild, USB clutched in her fist. "I've got it," she shouted, shoving past guards Hensley's private lab coordinates. "Proof." She dodged Titan's hunters, teamed with Regina, who'd gone dark after the bunker, tracking the bioweapons source. The feds dragged Darius back, uncuffing him as Tara plugged the drive into a laptop, files spilling out, blueprints, chemical logs, Hensley's orders to unleash it, all dated before the bombing. Ruiz paled, Voss cursed, and Darius stood, ribs, screaming but spirit surging. "Let's move," he said, voice ablade, and they did, piling into a van, Tara beside him. Caleb pulled from the cell, his trust unshaken. They raced north, hazmat vans trailing, the city a haze of smoke and panic, Darius's mind mapping the lab, a chance to end this nightmare. The lab crouched in a wooded lot, a low concrete bunker masked by pines, Titan guards patrolling, rifles glinting in the dawn. Darius led the charge, feds at his back, Tara and Caleb in the van, his pistol drawn, 3 rounds left, knife ready. He flanked left, Ruiz right, Voss covering, and they struck, shots cracking the silence, guards dropping. As Darius's aim held true, blood staining the snow, he breached the door, a sterile hall stretching deep, alarms blaring, and found it, vats of green liquid, pumps humming, the poison's heart. Regina emerged from a side room, her unit battered but alive. "We've got the antidote," she said, tossing him a vial. "Neutralize it now." Darius smashed the controls, pouring the antidote in, the pumps choking, green turning clear, the city's lifeline restored. They hauled evidence out, files, vials, Titan's fingerprints on every surface, the feds sealing it as hazmat teams. Swarmed, water tests shifting, the crisis easing. Darius stood in the snow, Caleb rushing to him, Tara filming, Regina nodding. The truth a flood no lie could damn. He'd stopped it, saved Detroit, thought he'd cleared his name. The reckoning, complete. The feds drove him back, Voss silent, Ruiz muttering, "You're clean, Kane, we'll push it," and Darius dared to breathe, the city's pulse steadying, Grayson's tape validated, Hensley's ghost slain. He surrendered at the precinct, hands. Tharp expecting exoneration, Caleb safe with Tara, the lab's proof a shield, his fight finally won. The cell locked behind him. "A formality," Voss said. "We'll sort it, Kane, evidence is gold." Darius sat, blood drying on his knuckles, the TV outside flickering to news. Water safe, Titan lab raided, Kane's role unclear. He leaned back, ribs easing, the weight lifting, thinking he'd broken Titan's spine, freed Detroit's soul. Then the speakers crackled, Hensley's voice, pre-recorded, chilling. "Kane's the mastermind, I tried to stop him. This was his plan." And the screen. Flashed forged files, emails. Darius ordering the poison. Titan framed as victims, the lab a setup. His stomach dropped. Caleb's gasp echoing from the hall, the feds turning, guns rising, Voss shouting, "You played us, Kane." The precinct locked down, hazmat teams pausing. The city's relief flipping to dread, Titan's dead hand striking. One last time. Darius stood, cuff snapping back on, the cell a tomb as Ruiz stormed out, Voss glaring, the broadcast looping Hensley's lie, drowning the lab's truth, the antidote's victory. He'd neutralized the poison, saved thousands, thought he'd won, but Titan's final move buried him, a frame-up so vast it rewrote reality. Caleb's cries faded, Tara's pleas cut off, the feds dragging him to a van, Supermax bound, his legacy shredded, the city he'd fought for spitting his name. The van rolled, Detroit's skyline fading, the lab's proof locked in evidence rooms, Hensley's ghost laughing from the grave, a reckoning turned to ruin. He'd struck Titan's heart, but they'd struck his soul, leaving him a prisoner in a war he couldn't win. Darius Kane sat shackled in a Supermax cell, the concrete walls a grey abyss, the air stale with the tang of bleach and despair, his wrists raw where the cuffs bit into his skin. The fluorescent buzz overhead was his only companion, Caleb's. Face a ghost in his mind. The boy torn from him as the feds hauled him from the precinct, Hensley's pre-recorded lie sealing his fate. Detroit's water was clean, thousands saved, the lab raided. But Titan's final strike had flipped it, Forged emails and a dead man's voice branding Darius the bioweapons architect, a terrorist who'd played the hero. His ribs ached. His knee throbbed. Blood crusted his knuckles from Grayson's beating. But the pain was nothing next to the weight of a world that saw him as a monster. He'd thought he'd won. Neutralized the poison, exposed Titan's rot, but Hensley's ghost had buried him. The truth a whisper in a storm of lies. The cell's slot clanged, a tray sliding through, gruel and water he didn't touch, his mind. Replaying the lab, Tara's proof, Regina's antidote, all for nothing. The feds had locked him here, a maximum security pit in Michigan's north, no windows, no hope. The broadcast of his guilt looping on a distant TV he couldn't see, Detroit's relief turning to rage, protests dying as fear took root. Caleb was with Tara, or so he prayed, but Jamal was still cuffed, Regina disavowed, his allies scattered by a frame-up too vast to fight. He leaned against the wall, eyes closed, the seal in him clawing for a way out. But the silence mocked him. His legacy a stain no confession could wash clean. He'd broken Titan's machine, saved a city, but they'd broken him back, a black man crushed by a system that never bent. Days blurred, the guards' boots a dull rhythm, their whispers venomous, terrorist, murderer, scum, racial slurs hissed. Through the slot, a reminder of why he'd fought, why he'd lost. He sat still, letting it fuel him, the fire that had carried him through Grayson's boot. The SWAT raid, the factory, the mansion, the lab, now a flicker in this cage. He'd thought it was over, the reckoning his triumph. But Hensley's dead. Hand had flipped the board, Titan's reach outlasting its masters. Price in cuffs, Grayson beaten, but the lie standing tall. Then the slot opened. No tray, just a voice, low, familiar. "Kane, it's Jamal, stay sharp, we're coming." Darius's pulse jumped, his friend's words a lifeline, but the slot shut, leaving him in the dark, hope a blade he couldn't trust. Outside, Detroit simmered, the water safe but the city scarred, hospitals overflowing, families mourning. The news a circus of Hensley's lie, Darius's face plastered everywhere, a villain no one questioned. Jamal freed on a technicality. Tara at his side worked from a basement flat, their faces gaunt, eyes burning with defiance. They'd found a thread, Hensley's secret server, a digital vault Titan thought buried, accessed through a back door. Jamal cracked, his hacker's hands trembling as files spilled out. Tara watched, breath held, as unedited footage loaded. Darius in Hensley's office, the confession raw, no coercion, a hidden seal device he'd planted on the desk. Its lens, catching every word, every flinch, Hensley's truth untainted. Jamal grinned, a rare crack in his exhaustion. "We've got him, D, the real deal. They broadcast it, not to newsrooms too corruptible, but straight to the internet, a live stream from a burner laptop, the footage flooding every platform. Chew Darius truth, trending as millions watched Hensley spill Titan's guts. Price's greed, Grayson's bloodlust, the bioweapon his own, not Darius's. The city woke, screens glowing in homes, bars, shelters, the unedited tape a thunderbolt. Protests reigniting, not with fire but with voices, thousands marching on the precinct, the courthouse, the governor's mansion, demanding Kane's release. Jamal hacked the prison's comms, looping the stream, guards staring as Hensley's words echoed, their venom turning to doubt, the lie peeling away. Tara filmed it all, her voice steady. "This is the truth they buried. Darius Kane saved us. Titan broke us." The feds moved fast, pressure mounting. Grayson recaptured in a raid, his face bloodied on live TV, dragged from a Titan safe house. His confession replayed, "I killed for them, Kane's clean. The protesters' blood his own, not Darius's." The Supermax trembled, guards unlocking Darius's cell, their eyes averted, shame thick as they uncuffed him. "You're out, Kane," feds' orders. He stood, ribs screaming, legs weak, but his spine straight, walking through the prison's steel guts. The TV now showing Grayson's arrest, Hensley's tape, the city's roar a balm on his soul. He stepped into daylight, snow crunching under. His boots, Jamal and Tara waiting, Caleb rushing into his arms, tears soaking his shirt. "Uncle, you did it." Darius held him, the weight lifting, not triumph but relief, the truth a sword he'd forged from nothing. Detroit's streets filled, not with riots but with chants. Keynes free the governor on air, pardoning him, Titan's HQ gutted by feds, Price confessing in cuffs, Hensley's legacy ash. Darius stood with Jamal, Tara, Regina joining, them her unit reinstated. The city rebuilding, scars deep but healing. He looked at Grayson on the screen, broken, confessing again, live Titan's orders. I framed him, the protester, the bomb, all me, and the nation watched. Outrage swelling, not just Detroit, but the world. A black man's fight a mirror to their own. Darius didn't smile. The cost too high. Caleb's trust his only victory. The system's rot exposed but unchanged, its teeth still sharp. He slipped away that night, leaving the cameras, the crowds, the city's fractured glow, a duffel. Over his shoulder, Caleb with Tara's family safe, free. The freeway stretched north, snow falling soft, his breath clouding as he walked, no destination, just motion, the seal in him needing silence after the storm. Detroit rebuilt behind him, forever changed, not by his fists, but by his stand, a truth forced into the light. Titan's empire dust, Grayson's cage his own, Hensley's lie a ghost no one believed. He wasn't a hero, not to himself, just a man who'd refused to break, who'd turned silence into a roar and vanished into the night. The war won, but the scars eternal. Darius Keynes' journey reveals raw truths about resilience, justice, and the cost of fighting systemic racism. His story teaches us that courage isn't just physical, it's the will to stand when the world turns against you. Darius, a black Navy SEAL, faced brutal injustice, from a racist cop's kick to a city's betrayal, yet he never broke. His persistence shows that truth can be a weapon, even when buried under lies, as he clawed through frame-ups and violence to expose Titan's corruption. The lesson here is clear. One voice, backed by grit and allies, can shift a tide, but it's never easy. Systemic racism, embodied by Grayson, Price, and Hensley, thrives on silence and power, twisting justice into a tool of oppression. Darius's fight underscores the need to question narratives, especially when they vilify the marginalized. Another takeaway is the power of community. Jamal, Tara, Regina, and Lena weren't just helpers. They were lifelines, proving that collective action can pierce even the thickest walls of deceit. Yet the cost haunts us. Caleb's trauma, the protesters' death, a city poisoned, showing that victory against racism often leaves scars. Darius's quiet exit reminds us that heroes don't always seek the spotlight. They fight for what's right, then step back, leaving change as their legacy. So what's your stand? How would you face a system stacked against you? Comment below if you'd fight like Darius. Hit like if his story moves you. Subscribe for more tales of justice and share to spark the conversation. Thanks for joining this journey. May you find strength to challenge the shadows in your own world.